I write my meals down. I commit them to my sponsor. I don't eat in between no matter what. And abstinence is the most important thing in my life. And my abstinence date just happened, December 30th, 1989. What kind of person gets abstinent right before New Year? I don't know. But what I do know is that that no day really mattered. It wasn't like, it just is the time when it is the time. And probably maybe there was something about the fact that it was some weird off time because to prove to myself that I was done, like when I look back on it. Anyway, so here I am, and I'm really glad to share. And it's nice to see some folks that I usually see really early in the morning, to see them in the later of the day. And then some of them are having their really late time. And this is really cool. Thank you, Tony. Where'd you go? Oh, there you are. Oh, and you're pink, whatever you're wearing. I was thinking, how do I want to say the short version of how I got here, just to qualify myself, which is important, I think, is that, there was never a time that I was neutral around food. And what I love about Gray Sheet is we don't expect that you're going to become neutral. And we're not, trying to work toward that goal. We're really embrace that the lack of neutrality. We embrace it, and I embrace it, and I'm okay with it. And so I would just say that I grew up, I was born into a family of, people usual, typical kind of, dysfunctional home with lots of ism, and that as soon as I had the ability to feed myself, to get the food off the counter of the kitchen, I did. And I was a precocious kid in a lot of ways. And, I think, I don't know. I guess that just for the first time I thought about this just now. First, I was precocious, but I also knew I was going to have to fend for myself from a very young age. And so I fended for myself, and I got up on the counters and I started giving myself whatever food was out there. And my mother has this, and she still does, a very weird habit of leaving things on the counter. It just, nothing kind of goes in the cabinets. It's just sort of on the counter. And I grew up in the 70s, most of the years that I remember, and so there were a lot of prepackaged foods were really popular, and pop and soda and just things that were all, what's that word, processed, and there was no cooking at home. And just, I really, we spent a lot of money on just like packaged food, and we didn't have money. So I came from a working class family in a neighborhood in Chicago where, what's kind of fun, this is the Irish meeting. I mean, all my friends were either Irish or Jewish. And so we're all like kind of, what's the word? Similar, I guess, in a lot of ways. That's another conversation. But anyhow, so food, we spent money on going to eat in delis and diners. So I ate, it was mostly wherever you could get the most food. It wasn't like eating the lovely food that you can get in a French restaurant, but instead it was the places where they bring in in a wheelbarrow. And I just ate, and I ate, and I ate, and I ate on the way to school, and I ate on the way home from school, and I ate the meals, and I ate until I, by the time, and I was always obese. So I was always obese. The doctors always said I was an obese child. So I grew up as a fat kid. So I'm in the fat kid group. So like, if you were a fat kid, there's the group of people of us in Gray Sheet that were fat kids, and there's the group of people that were not. And then there's the group of people that were, and so I'm in the fat kid group, and that's a whole experience of itself. And, but I was the fat kid, popular kid, because I was, okay. That was my boss. So that's how important Gray Sheet is. Sorry, dude, I'll talk to you later. That's kind of the category I was in. And I was very much I took care of myself, and I took care of myself with food. Food was reliable, and nothing else was. I could sum up my whole childhood. Food was reliable, and nothing else was. My people weren't the same from one minute to the next. There was like mood my mother, I think, has a mood disorder, and and I didn't know that. I just thought she was batshit crazy, and things would be, I wouldn't know what I was walking into every day. And but food was always reliable. You know how that is. You get it, you buy it or you whatever, and it's just reliable. Well, the best news of all for you newer people is your gray sheet food is reliable too. But I didn't learn that right away. But I stuck around long enough to learn that. So I ate and ate and ate. Fast forwarding to when I was 17, and I was like 235 pounds. So that's like 100 pounds less than I am, more than I am now. And I went to treatment for my eating disorder. And my favorite joke is that I don't have an eating disorder. I eat just fine. Thank you. It works just fine. Anyway, but I did go to treatment, but the treatment wasn't like a kind of a hospital-y kind of place. In those days, in the 80s, it was more of like a therapy kind of place. And it was run by these OA people. And it was called Care Unit Hospital. It was in LA. And I went there. And I got handed a big book. And what else was I handed? A 24-hour day book. And the journey began. And that was 1982. And I spent a lot of time in regular OA because what I learned there, and I didn't tell you anything about my dieting, which I can just simply tell you that in 4th grade, I went to Weight Watchers. So I wasn't happy. I mean, eating and getting, I mean, I was miserable as an adolescent. I mean, that's an understatement. I tried to lose weight. I did. I tried to lose weight, but I couldn't do anything longer than 2 weeks. And what I've learned, what I tell people in Gray Sheet is just keep going for 2 weeks at least, because in 2 weeks, things really do change in your body. Like if you can get through that period of time, a lot can happen. But there's a lot of that. And then that's when really the need to really kick in, like psychically, I was unable to go longer than 2 weeks because I had no place. There's no support. And it's not just support around the food, it's support around everything, like everything. So anyway, I couldn't diet successfully, and I did them all. And all the ones we know, the little round things that come from chickens, the big round yellow fruit things, and the, powders, and all of that. And I wasn't good at it. I mean, I couldn't do it. And so it didn't, so I had sort of resigned myself. But I wasn't, so I get to this place, I go to OA, I start being a member of OA, and there I was 17, 18, 19, 20, going through college, being in OA. And I was really, I loved it. I gotta say, as a person, I mean, I loved going to my place, and it felt like a family I hadn't had. People were talking, truthfully. People were being like, it was just a place where I was being seen. I wasn't invisible. And eventually, just like I've learned, is as a person who knows that food can be, and especially carbohydrates, can be anesthetizing, because that's what I did with food when I was a kid. It was an anesthesia, I started doing it again. And it didn't matter that I was in OA. I mean, I just started doing it again. I started eating, because OA got rid of the food plans. And so I was doing moderate meals. And the moderate meals for me were like, I was measuring them by saying 1 plate full. Well, 1 plate of going to a salad bar. Do you know I'm sure you all know what you can put on a plate. And especially if you go to the places where they have big plates. And none of it is leafy, okay? Everything I chose was like Gesundheit. So, but that was my measuring. It was like my measuring. I look back, and I always liked measuring my food. I had a little bit of an affection for it, because it told me, and this must be part of my kind of wiring, that I like to know some stuff. I did like the measuring.
You're at 10 minutes.
Thank you. So anyway, that was in the back of my mind that I did like measuring my food. And also I had gone to one gray sheet meeting when I lived in Boston, which is where I went to college. Went to one gray sheet meeting in Cambridge. So I kind of had that in the back of my mind. So fast forward to I moved to New York City after I graduated from college, and I have this job, this amazing, exciting job. And I'm just trying to find an OA meeting that seems powerful or seems supportive, and I can't. And I try to want this one and that one and whatever, and I'm in Manhattan and I'm in Queens, and nothing is happening. And I'm just eating one food group. It's supposed to be a pyramid. Well, I'm eating whatever, wherever this one falls, but it's like the one that we don't eat. So that was the one I was eating. And so I was hence I was gaining weight back, and I never got to this weight, which I think is just kind of my average weight. Like, I mean, I think this is pretty much where I land. There's more weight on me below my chest than you can't see it, but that, I mean, my numbers are good. They're balanced. So anyway, so I was afraid. And so I looked on a meeting list, an OA meeting list, and it said gray sheet meeting. So I went to the gray sheet meeting in Manhattan, and I walked in to it, and there were a lot of people in there in St. Bart's Church, and they were just like, they reminded me of old school OA. They were like, and a little bit like the gray sheet meeting I had gone to, which, by the way, I liked very fine in Cambridge, but they were probably, I guess I would say, no offense, they were like a little bit cooler. It was New York City after all. And, black was the new black color that everybody was wearing. This was 1989. And it was like, wow, okay, I feel like shit. And I've been around OA for a long time, and I spoke at their World Service Conference. I mean, I was like I wasn't the poster child, but I was really involved. And when I got to this gray sheet meeting, it didn't matter. And God, I'm just grateful I had this willingness. I just raised my hand. They said, is anybody new? And I raised my hand and I said, I'm new. And you know what? I had no idea, but that was the passageway opened. And then somebody next to me said, do you need a sponsor? And I knew I did. And I hadn't seen hide nor hair of a sponsor for ages. And these people were like, there was like 10 people with their hands up. So I just went for it. A lot of what I do, and it drives a lot of people crazy in my personal life, is that I kind of just go with it. And they just sort of like, but I just went with it. And that's what I do in the program too, is I just kind of go with it. And I do and I'm a pretty good doer. Like, I'm a kind of a like I do follow rules and I don't follow rules, but that's more when I'm just playing around. Anyway, I took a sponsor, and I plan to be here for 90 days to get back on track. And I don't even blame myself. I didn't know what I was in for, but I just took to it, and I took to this, and I just kept doing it. And I kept weighing and measuring my food. And, in 31 years, you go through a lot of things. And all I have is just more experience. And I know some of you on this call are old timers too. And, I just have more experience. I could easily find myself. It's like somebody asked me recently, do you remember what it's like, to eat? And I was like it's this, like it's just right next to me. Like it's sitting right here. That's how much I remember. I remember the feeling. I remember feeling terrible. But
1 minute.
Great. Thank you. Is that 1 minute? I have it.
Yeah. Okay.
It's in my body, that feeling. I don't feel that today. As I hope you can. I don't feel that today, but I can remember it so well that it's really easy for me to come back to meetings, to remember that the causality. Why do I feel so good? Well, because I've done these very things throughout the years. I've been through surgeries. I have kids. I, have had jobs. I do, I can not answer the call from my boss because I know who I am today. And I know that it's not about it's almost like I want to say I'm in the world, but I'm not of the world. I've learned a lot from people here in Gray Sheet, and this is not, this is, we often say this is not for sissies, this program, and yet, and it isn't. And yet, and I don't even know what that maybe I'm just realizing that even that word doesn't really fly these days. So let me blow that word off. But let me just say this is a tough deal. And the joy for me, it has been tough at times. Not eating, but just life. And
That's the time.
yeah, okay, I'll wrap up. Some of you know me and you know what I've been through, but different things. But the joy is far greater. The joy in the 31 years has been far more than this much really hard stuff. So I'm going to leave it at that. And I'm going to keep coming back because that's how I roll. Thank you.